Good morning, everyone. On Mother's Day, last Sunday, I decided to visit my father. It had been a while because of the shelter in place, but we really wanted to see each other because it was the first Mother's Day we would have since my mom died. I also really wanted to check in on him, see what was in his pantry and his freezer and fridge, and make sure he was well supplied for, whether the apartment was clean and whether he was doing his exercises. And to my relief, Dad was okay. I did ask him, Dad, are you doing your exercises? And he said, yes, I walk 2 miles a day. But something has happened. My fanny pack buckle broke. I'm like, your fanny pack buckle broke. Oh, fanny packs. So ugly and so useful. When my dad started exercising again after Mom died, I got him a fanny pack so that he could put his phone and keys into the fanny pack while he did his vigorous walking. Well, the buckle had broken and Dad tied a knot where the buckle should have been. At my mother's sewing desk, I fished through her sewing notions. I felt my heart pinch here and there as I touched her embroidery scissors, her seam ripper, and her bobbins. In the third box of notions, I found a buckle. I walked over to the kitchen where Dad was cooking and said, "Will this work?" He said in surprise, "Wow, that's perfect. Where did you find it?" And I said, "Oh, in Mom's things." And then we looked at each other and we both gasped. And he picked up the buckle in his finger and he said, "Your mother is still taking care of me." And then we started to cry. And it was the first time we got to cry together since we left the hospital room. And we felt Mom was very close. And yet she also felt far. Jesus tells his disciples today in the Gospel of John, "I will not leave you orphaned. I am coming to you. In a little while, the world will no longer see me, but you will see me. Because I live, you also will live." This small portion of the farewell discourse in the Gospel of John, where Jesus is saying goodbye to his disciples, is full of grief and ache. They don't know how they will survive life without Jesus, with him being gone. And so Jesus comforts them. Even as things will change drastically, they will not be abandoned. He promises them. They will not be orphaned. They will experience him in another way. But what's even more amazing is that there is another advocate. And that advocate is coming, the Spirit. The Spirit will enable them to survive the grief and help them to love one another, which is the work that they must continue to do when he is gone, when he has ascended. Eastertide this year has been a very different kind of Eastertide. Therefore, resurrection takes on a different set of ponderings for us. Recently, at a meeting with Bishop Lucinda, she said that resurrection life is not merely about triumph, but about uncertainty and walking a path that is not yet built. The first disciples on those first days of Easter, after the resurrection, they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what new life meant. They didn't really know how it was going to turn out. So too, we who abide in this time of the pandemic, we don't know how it will turn out. What's the outcome? It is an in-between time, placed between grief and expectation. Jesus promises another advocate to come to abide in his disciples, and therefore also in us. Jesus has been the advocate as the incarnated Word, and in his ascended self, he will remain our advocate. But there is greater news than hoped for, and that is that there is another advocate, and this Spirit comes to abide with us and help us survive feelings of abandonment, fear, grief, and give us courage to hope and to love. We now have two advocates. This is part of the promise of abundant life that Jesus indicated in all his miracles in the Gospel of John, which were signs pointing to the promise of abundant life, grace upon grace. We will not be abandoned. We will be given power to love and to keep Jesus' commandment to love. We will be taught by the Spirit and empowered to do even greater things than Jesus did. But the character of the second advocate is different than the first advocate, the Word made flesh. The Word made flesh talked a lot. Jesus spoke in long discourses in the Gospel of John. He had to. He didn't have much time to teach by word what he needed to teach. Now, the second advocate, however, is quiet and subtle. It moves where it wills. You might hear the sound of it like the rustling of leaves, but you don't know where it comes from or where it goes. It can catch you off guard the way it comes to you. Maybe it is like the way my mother came to my dad in something as small as a buckle found in a box of notions. But the message is aimed for love, for connection, a message that traverses even over the gap of death. The love of the Spirit is like this. You can trust that it is for you, that it is taking care of you. It is in this trust of the Spirit that we abide as we traverse not just the next 2 weeks, the rest of Eastertide, but the long road of uncertainty that lies ahead. We will need to ask important questions, and the answers will be slow in coming, if they come at all. We will need to ask the questions anyway. For the Spirit that is given is also the Spirit of Pentecost, which gives birth to the church and helps us be reborn. We will need to see how our community can participate in what is to come. I read a couple of questions that Shively Smith, a biblical scholar, offers for us in these uncertain days as we think about where the church will go. And she asked these questions, and I want you to think about them too. What are the new practices even in the throes of social distancing, that we can do to build connection, relationship, and belonging that supports and extends life? What are the opportunities to accompany each other in ways that are visibly instructive to a world that prefers separation and everyone for themselves? I think the gift of the church to the world at this time is how we answer some of these questions, making connection, extending life. How do we do this? However we do this, and it will be a long conversation and a series of experiments, we know that Jesus will abide with us and that the Spirit will guide us. So let us take heart to trust and to take ear to listen. Most important, let us love one another, for love will lead the way. The Advocate will give us comfort in hard times. When the resurrected Jesus appeared to the disciples, he said, "My peace I give to you, my own peace I leave with you. Be not afraid." And then he breathed on them the Holy Spirit, and it is being breathed in us also. It must have been a peace like that that fell on my father. The day after Mother's Day, my dad awoke and said it was the first time he slept well since Mom died. We wondered why together. It was a peace beyond understanding. The Spirit had accompanied him across a threshold, and the Spirit will accompany us all also. Amen.